Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Terrain Studio. I'm your host, Sean Morris. Today on the Terrain Studio, we are into Kashyyyk Week, Day 8. There's no definitive end to Kashyyyk Week, but likely tomorrow will be the last time I will live broadcast this specifically via this route here. Everything else will move back to the Patreon content, but we'll still get some stuff out. So if you guys are on there or have considered joining, it's a good time if you're interested in following the Kashyyyk Project. That's not to say that you won't see photos or things like that, but just in terms of doing the sessions, I'll probably do those over there and make them a little bit more tighter in terms of explanation wise and timelines. But nonetheless, we are here. We still got some days, so let's not digress about where we're going to be. We are here at present and Day 8 of the Kashyyyk Project. I have the recap here just up on screen if you have not been following along. Day 1, we worked on some hut platforms, got those finished so that we could use them for basically sizing of all the subsequent builds steps that we've done. We've done the cutting the foam substrate, so that was basically laying in the undertone, the half-inch layer that we were going to work from and either build up or down, as it were. We did some scratch building and just sort of talked a little bit about that and sort of cutting small materials from bulk materials and et cetera and so forth. I'm actually going to sort of have a small extension of that today. I'm going to show you some items that I purchased that are pre-cut and the specific reasons why I've done that. Day 4, we worked on the beach concept, the layout. We carved that in. We sort of got our sort of beach line, if you will, and then we started carving in the contours of transitioning up from the water feature that will later be added. We worked on the barrier wall layout on Day 5. We worked on the barrier wall construction on Day 6, and we continued with that on Day 7, which was yesterday. I have called today ground formations, which is really going to be an extension of working around the barrier wall. I've also got some of the plastic card laid in, but I'm also going to cut a piece and show you kind of how that's working, the concept behind that, and what we're going to do specifically with that. I did a bunch more research on Kashyyyk, and I found out I guess, a rationale for the wall style that I'm going to use, even though the scale is going to be a little bit maybe small. We'll talk a little bit about that in concept here today. The screens for today will be, I will adjust that other one and then where I'm going to work there. So primarily, if you guys are fine, I'm going to work from this scene here. That way I can just move around. If I'm in the way at all, I will transition the camera and give you a little bit more of a down shot. It'll be adjusted slightly. That was yesterday's angle. My apologies. I was a little bit rushed getting back here. I went out to the local hobby store. I wanted to buy some blades and support local, and I'll talk a little bit about that in my rambles today. But then I also got stuck behind a train. I say trains. It was one train, but I got stuck behind twice because just how our city is. So fantastic. You guys know what that's like, perhaps. And being stuck behind the same one twice was a bit of a bummer, but nonetheless, I made it in time. We're set up. We're ready to go. We got 3 people spying on us here in the live view. So if you are jumping in at any point, same rules apply. Let me know where you're from, what you're doing, what your connection to the hobby is, all that good stuff. And of course, the main rule is interrupt as much as possible with questions so that I can take a break and have some prattling on about either a response to your question, give my opinion, or just general observation as to what's going on. If at any point you want to see anything that I'm not showing and you have a question about that, I can of course move the cameras around and we'll get to that. So without further ado, let's get to it. Let me show you what we did last night, or what I did last night, and then we'll move on from there. So I'll perhaps switch to the overhead, and I will make a small adjustment so you guys can see this a little bit better. Let me know if you can hear everything. Hopefully you can. I have the overhead mic going, so I should be rather close, and it should work. I also need to bring my trackpad so that I can keep up the chat and all the questions that you may or may not have. So let's just make a small adjustment on this camera here so we can go there. So just minus the microphone. Perfect. Thank you, Johnny. So we'll do the overhead shot kind of looking down. So last night I did quite a bit of work, I guess, in a way. I was working on the formations and sort of trying to figure out exactly how I wanted the flow of this to go. So you'll notice that I sort of truncated this piece a little bit strangely. So this is the piece that I was working on yesterday. And what I did is I went in and first I carved in the contours. So hopefully you guys can pick that up on camera. And you can see I sort of put those depressions in. I got a little bit of a back slope here. This is going to run along that retaining wall. And then the main point of concern that I had when I got working on this yesterday was I didn't want to cover up all these nice features here. You can see the root structure that I have laid in here. And I worked really hard to kind of get that root in, and I really wanted to sell that look. And so sort of just truncating it right over the top and sort of covering all that in didn't really feel very conducive to the look I was going for. So what I did is I sloped this down in, and so we have a little bit of a wedge in here, which is fine. And then you'll notice I cut it to be square along the edge. I also brought it around the tree, so while it looks a little bit weird now with this hard L shape, that's really just to make sure that the ground level lines up with the tree. And so we'll bring this in and slope this, and it'll be much more natural, and that will disappear, and we won't have that hard line. We just have that pink and brown, which makes that really distinct. The other corner, I decided that I was going to build up a little bit of a thicker piece, and so here, hopefully you guys can see the contours in that as well. And that's going to go in this corner, and that's going to really sell that vegetation, right? We're gonna bring that big vegetation patch here. We're gonna have some of that there as well, and sort of bringing that into the beach. So I wanted to have sort of that flow into this portion that we're not going to do, but at the same time I want to really elevate that so it wasn't so gradual in all the cases. Then I created this little sort of island piece here. Again, pretty simplistic. I did cut some like sort of swooped edges into it, sort of give that sand blown look, and that's just going to go here to create a little bit of an island patch, and again then start to sell that transition of vegetation. So a little bit of vegetation on there just to sell that sort of thickening as we get more inland. And so that sort of finishes off this side. It's still relatively flat as we talked about. So over here, this piece that we worked on yesterday, remember yesterday we cut all these very strange shapes in, and we were just getting that sort of hallowed edge inside here, and this fits against the tree. You'll also notice that I have since covered this over with plastic card, and then subsequently lined this as well. So what this is effectively is going to be, this is our retaining wall. Now, in the interest of making it much more simple for me to, this is contact cemented on, by the way. I just had this tape holding while I was out, so I'm going to pull that off. But in the interest of having to cut much more symmetrical shapes, in the sense that I was able to just cut a line, I did a little bit of a scoring here to fit over the wood and angled here into the tree. But when this piece attaches to here, which it does, then you'll see that profile changes. However, as opposed to having to measure and cut that swooping edge around here, it was just a lot easier for me to cut and apply that here now. This is actually the outside edge, and then this runs inside, same premise here. We'll bring a little bit of the ground covering up to here, and then the piece I'm going to cut for you right now is just going to fit in here. It's a bit shorter, obviously, because this other bottom section's in, so we're going to cut and put that in as well. Now, for the wall itself, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of plastic card around this strip as well. But I'm actually going to bring rocks and build a rock wall here, because I got looking again last night, go down the Kashyyyk rabbit hole almost every single night looking for inspiration. And I noticed that some of the stuff closest to the beach was more like rock wall in nature. And so while I want to sell that retaining wall look, I'm going to bring a little bit of the plastic card in. I'm mostly going to cover this with rock. However, when I went looking for wall design features, all I could find and what I discovered was apparently inland from the Kashyyyk beach, they've built these sort of like floodgate walls. And that makes sense, you know, if the surf was higher or if there was a flood potential, they could open or close these walls. So the walls themselves kind of have like metal panels along the bottom, then they extend up via buttresses, and then the buttresses tend to have this like piping system that runs along the edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to build that into this wall. So while we have the huts on here, and we were going to have some sort of transitional element here, I'm going to bring the piping in, but I'm probably going to run it along the board edge. and then I'm probably going to use it along the backside edge as well. So I'm going to still leave that transition here, but I'm really going to sell that sort of pipe look. And so I'm actually going to build up some stuff on the outside of the table, and then have that look really sold more for a piece that's going to be on the outside, so not really in the way of play, but I really wanted to sell that look. And I thought if I just did it here and here, it wouldn't really work. So I'm going to bring that piping up. We're going to bring some buttresses up, and we're going to have sort of it will almost serve as a barricade that's up top here. So this will almost be like a kind of like a parapet, if you will, like a sort of a fortress wall, and then this as well. And I thought that might be a nice way to incorporate the floodgate look within the build, and then also have some sort of functional element, so you weren't just like fully exposed up on this piece. So that being said, I've purposely left this detached so that I can get in here and work on the wall, and I'll probably go in and do most of the features before I attach this. Which does waylay us a little bit from putting the ground texture in, but at the same time, having the ability to work in and around this and constantly being able to pick this up and manipulate and get in those weird angles, and then actually apply the primer color to this is going to be a lot more conducive if I have this as a detachable piece. So that slides in there, and then like I said, this goes here, fits in there, that goes nicely there. We have this here and then this here. And so we got that kind of done last night. So today what we're going to do is we're just going to pitter and patter and get around a few things. We'll finish up that little piece. And then maybe I might start working concept wise, or at least start talking a little bit about the concept of what those wall panels might look like, how I might go about layering some of that in. We'll also do a little bit of the attachment of these pieces. There's no reason why we can't attach these. And if we get these in place, that gives us a little bit of an index, so that when we are going to start building on these initial wall buttresses, we're going to have a frame of reference in terms of how far down in we're going to go. We're actually going to notch these pieces so that we can put the plastic card down in, solidifying that a little bit tighter, and then selling the look of it actually shooting into the ground and being more of a part. So no, that's no problem, Tyrone. No apologies necessary for coming late. It's not class. You won't get in trouble with the principal here. So even though I am a principal, and I don't get angry at children. So so what we're gonna do, or not to suggest you're a child, but you know what I mean. So let's go ahead and finish up the piece of plastic card. Then we'll go ahead and index these and lay those in. And then while that's setting up, we talk a little bit of concept, and then we'll go back and sort of apply that. So you guys will see how this context cement works and sets up. It's pretty fantastic and easy stuff. So, all right. So what we need to do is, I need a chair because I'd like to. Had a 10-day vacation, and I don't think I've sat down hardly during most of it. So I just went to the hobby store, as I said, and support local always. When there we go. And so what I did was picked up some plastic card tubing, and the sit on this side. Sorry, I have my TV on this side so I can see the questions. And so the plastic card that I picked up, this polystyrene, I call it plastic card. It's effectively, in many ways, a card form. So I got the expensive stuff today. And again, not that I always buy this, but I wanted to just kind of put this in perspective. I talked a little bit about this. So these sheets right here, 752 sheets, I can literally buy about 30 times this size for just about double the price. However, that's only when I'm buying it in wholesale and bulk, and like I said, it doesn't support local stores if that's my only route. But this is evergreen product here. It's really fantastic stuff. I use it a lot, and we're going to use it a lot on this project for all the pieces that we're going to add. We're going to scratch build everything, and for that we're going to use polystyrene. So these sheeting pieces right here, I had a sheet of this large sheet, but it was a little bit too thick, so I had to go get a small piece to finish up that. So we're only going to use a small, like 1.5 inch strip of it, so we'll have lots left. And this one comes with 2 sheets inside the packages, depending on the thickness. If it's thinner than this, it's usually 3. If it's super thin, it's like 4 to 5 sheets, and if it's thick, This is 1 mil here. 1.5 will come with 2, and then I believe the 2 and the 3 just come with 1 sheet. So that's the stuff we're going to work with. I also went and bought more blades because I used up my last one, of course. And so these blades are pretty pricey. They're work out to be about $1 a piece, but they're important to have for sharp cuts. Now the other things that I picked up, and I have a ton of these on the other side of the room, but I wasn't sure if I had this size, so I picked it up anyway. This is square tubing here, so let me just quickly open this up. I don't know if I had a knife on the other side of the room, which I do. So this stuff here is pre-cut and it's square, but it's also hollow. And so we're going to use this primarily to create our buttresses along here. So we'll bring that up, and then what we're probably going to do is angle it in to create a look sort of like, if I were to simulate the top of this, it'll look something like that. So we're going to bring this up, we're going to angle cut this, and then with the top portion here, we're going to run our pipes through, because that's kind of the look that I discovered in Kashyyyk. So it'll look almost like it's a barbed wire fence, with the exception that the barbed wire will actually be piping. And so that'll run along here. So what we're going to attempt to do when we make this is, and this one is square tubing. I have some smaller square tubing that I'm going to use as a cross beam. And then what we're going to attempt to do with this is round tubing that's hollow, is we're going, and you can get this solid and hollow. The reason that I got hollow, not because I'm going to have any flow through it, but because the hollow stuff is a little easier to bend and manipulate. And so what we're going to attempt to do is actually replicate and follow this contour through those buttresses. So we're going to cut holes through the top of the buttress, and we're going to run the piping through to get this really conducive flow of piping. Now obviously when we get to the corner, we're going to stop it, and then we're going to have to pick another piece and then start that again. So it'll have a little bit of a truncation here, maybe a little bit of a bit of imagination, but we can simulate that perhaps this piping ran off this way, and then this one ran into it, and it just T-sectioned here. So the idea being that we're going to have this sort of like 3 piping piece. I'm going to do probably 1 large and 2 smaller pipes, and that will run there and give us a nice sort of a wall extension. One of the things that this is going to do is, remember I said about scale wise, this is 2.5 inches, and so we're probably going to sell another inch and a quarter off this. So we'll have this nice like 3.25 inch wall running up here, which will be quite nice and really sell that look. On the back side, it's a little shorter because we've brought the landscape up, but we'll sell a little bit more of the height here as well. And then it will still be short enough that won't be encroaching on the size of the huts. The huts themselves are a little bit elevated, and then of course on top of that is the actual hut structure. So we can sell that those 2 features without sort of dwarfing one or the other. So that is what we got going on there. Little tip about this stuff: if you take it out of the package, keep your package, because when you go to purchase this, it has a nice item number, and sometimes, because some of this stuff is like 7.9 mil by 7.9 mil, and then this one is 4.8 mil. Well, they're a pretty distinct difference. But the closer that you get, this is 4.8, this is 4.8. If you start mixing up your stuff, you're like, oh, was that 4.8 or was that the 5 that I used on there? I just find keeping the packages is so much easier when I need to go purchase some more. I also bought some angle, 3/16 angle, and that's going to just be used for the corners. So as opposed to putting a buttress on the corner, I'm just going to use this angle. It's going to look like it's a buttress, and we're going to just solidify these 2 pieces of plastic card together, just to make sure that we don't have any delamination in there. We'll peel the tape off in a minute, but let's actually cut this next piece. This was the piece I originally cut for there. Somebody's coming in. But it was too thick, and when I cut it, I was like, oh, that's actually, this is 1 mil, this is 1.5, so it was a bit too thick, so we're going to switch over to the 1 mil and then cut this piece. I'm just going to grab my knife and scissors and ruler from the other side of the room. There we go. All right, and then let's make a cut. So we'll open this up. you hear some dogs barking, just my apologies. All right, and then what we're gonna do, maybe I will rotate this so you guys can see it a little bit more face on here. Oh, almost fell over. Try not to do that. There, hopefully that is, yeah, that'll work for you guys. All right, so we are going to lay in this piece over there. So I'm actually going to switch over this side and start laying this in. Now you can do this one of two ways. You can use a piece of paper to sort of measure this out and check that measurement if you want to first. That's fine. You can use a scrap, like another piece, or you can just actually use the plastic card that you're going to use for that. So we got a little bit of a forgiveness in the fact that we got a couple sheets here, so I'm going to attempt to just do this with the physical feature. Now, what we have to make sure is that this piece here is not migrating around, because let's just say, for example, it was just kicked out a little bit. It looks like it's all squared up. Everything looks good, but then when I go to make that measurement and then I go press this in, I'm going to be short or long, and I want to avoid that. So how do I ensure that? Well, as always, you grab your painter's tape, and I have to keep walking in front of the camera, my apologies. You grab your painter's tape and you find your reference point. So I'm going to check this back side. Okay, just checking this out. Press this piece in exactly where it needs to go. I'm going to put a piece of tape on that. Now, the more you glue together, the less you're going to have to sort of tape, but at the same time, that trade-off, as I told you, is it becomes a little harder to work. Having to build the wall when it's attached here would be a lot more work than just having it free floating. So all I have to do is just find my points of reference, make sure it's pressed in, pick a couple points, and then just solidify those. There we go. So I think that's pretty good. Now I feel confident in my measurement ability here. So we have an option to go right to the tree or in front of the tree. I really like the feature in here, so I'm actually going to just go to this side of the tree. You're going to see though that, hello Noah, we're going to see though that if I go here and it's squared, it's not really going to reach the edge. I'm going to have a bit of a gap right here. And so I'm going to cut it a little bit long and then fix that afterwards. So I'm going to go a little bit past that. I know I got a little bit of working room, and a little bit long to trim it down is much easier than being short. And I got a little bit of work to do on that side, so I'm going to go there, pressing this in, following the contour as best I can. And of course I don't have a pencil over here, so I'm going to grab that as well. You know, if I pre-planned a little bit better, it'd be fine. I usually just run around like a madman here on my own, so I'm not as worried about camera angles. All right, let's go back and try that again. So pressing that in as tightly as we can, making sure we've accounted for that extra little bit on this end that will angle later. Pressing into the tree, pressing into the wall, pressing in here, and we're just going to make a little bit of a mark here. Okay, so now we have a small line, and we're going to square this up as best we can. Now, this being a fresh factory cut piece, it should more or less be square. So we hope. So we're going to go ahead and put our ruler there, and I'm going to cut this off. So 1 mil thick. So the general rule for me is it's a cut per half mil, or 2 cuts per mil. I do a scoring cut. 1, 2, and I like to snap plastic card. I generally don't cut all the way through, because what ends up happening is typically I'll either score one section too much, and then when I go to tear it, when I go to tear it, because I think I can, part of it will grip and it will actually put a little divot in the backside, and I want to avoid that. So nice clean break there. We got a really fresh cut. So let's go back to our piece. Now we know it's going to be long. That's fine. We've accounted for the extra length. We're really worried about getting this crisp edge here. We'll obviously put a buttress over the join, so that's fine to account for that. And we're just going to keep flexing this, and flexing until we get a nice fit. Now, it's a very awkward angle because it's an S. It goes in and out and then kicks out even more. So now what we're going to do is try to find where we're going to start shoring this up. So the tree's here, so I'm going to draw a little line to kick out from there, and that's going to give us our next reference point for cutting. Now I'm going to tape this, even though it's not going to hold that well. It's going to act like an extra hand. I'm going to tape that as tight as I can to there. It's just going to allow me to free up a hand to press this in, keeping it as tight as I can. And then our reference point is right there. And then we're going to figure out, okay, we're going to need to come up to about here. So we're going to nick that. We're also going to press this down and figure out what our backside is going to look like in terms of height-wise. So what I've done here is just add in a reference line. You can't really, there you go, a reference line. So that's the height. And then on the front side, I'm going to go from this point to this point, and I'm going to do a little bit of an angle, just a crude angle cut here to start framing in as close as we can what that line might look like. So scoring 1 and 2. There we go, break that off. And then on the back side, I want to leave the line just to be a bit proud. If I need to sand off, I can. Gonna go there. And that should be roughly correct. Score that. I really like how that cut. Going to run them through again because it's got 2 tracks, and I wanted to follow the correct one. That might be got a little bit of a nick in there, and I don't really love that. Blade was probably not as sharp as it should have been. Count for that. Yeah, we're still okay because we're a little bit proud of that line. So. Alright, so pressing that in, really want to be tight as we can on this. We'll trim that top a little bit there anyway, that's exactly what we need to do. And then we need to cut this on this angle here a little bit more, but not too much. Alright, so now this is just where we're eyeball referencing here. So we're going to come here, we're going to cut it like that. Changing that angle a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to swap that blade. Right now, no need in having a dull blade if we don't need to. I'm cutting with, Otis, I'm cutting with an X-Acto knife. Just an XL X-Acto knife and XL blades, but I mean really any knife will be fine. There's not a specific plastic card cutter that I'm using, but the real thing that you got to pay attention to is make sure that your blade is nice and crisp, because if it isn't, you're gonna get some issues with your cut. I'm going to show you. I have to trim just a little teeny bit off this. Just it's a little bit proud of the foam there. And so with this blade I just swapped on, I'm going to show you what kind of good precision you can get when your blade is right. Okay, so I just cut this sliver off here, and it's so thin you can see that it actually, that piece actually starts to coil just on the knife pressure alone. So this is super, super thin, and you'll see so thin that I can just tease that apart. So having a nice sharp blade will allow you to actually do that, and you can get a really nice crisp fit. There we go. Yeah, so much better now. Let me rotate that to the correct side, correct angle. Go and push that in, push that in. We're getting there on the top. Just got to squeeze the bottom a little bit. So now what we need to do is make sure, okay, the top is good. We want to change our bottom angle. So we're going to keep the top as much as possible. Change that angle a little bit more towards the bottom. And again, just scoring through these pieces. So because we're building everything from scratch, there's no known measurements. That's a plus and a minus. The minus is that we have to reference everything in order to do things. The good news is that we have much more control over how big, how tall, how wide, how narrow, where things land, where they, like, we have the control here in the build process to ensure that that happens. And so that's actually a nice element of scratch building in terms of freestyling it here. Okay, that is pretty darn awesome. Fits in, it's flush to the tree. I don't think we can get that any better. It's sitting right inside this little knob that's sticking out of the tree. It sets in. It's got a very natural fit. It contours in quite nicely. I probably could, I guess, maybe trim that a little bit if I want to sit it against the foam top. I'm just not sure if that's going to be better or worse. I think I like it there. I think I'm not gonna try to get that any better. And then let me just press this in. I'm going to trim this. This one was nice and flush. The other one has a little bit of a bevel. I'm just going to cut the smallest of angles into this. There we go. Let me fit that again. So I'm not sure if you guys are keeping track how many times I've lifted and manipulated this, but just trying to get that into there. So on its own, I can just, there we go. So there, so on its own now it's staying in. So that is the tightness of that fit that we have, the pressure of the piece, and it's actually holding the contour as well, which is super nice. So it has that right in there. Let me grab this and I'll just freehand this camera for a second. I'll bring this right in here. I gotta power this up. So you can see here that we'll flex that in with the tape, but that's going to be our join right there, and then we've contoured it along, and then let me just fit this in, manipulate this along, and then our fit at the tree is going to be there. And so that's what we're looking for tightness, to get that straight in. And then in terms of following the contour, once that's taped in, it'll be fine. And you can see that this is contoured the same, and then we've gone around here. Anywhere that there was, let's say, a little bit of a differentiation in terms of, like, so the plastic card to follow this, it was much more conducive to just actually keep that round. And so I don't have any contact here. That's fine. The ground material will fill that in, and we'll also have it here. So there's not really going to be an issue with this. This is thick enough that once this is secured, you're not going to get a lot of flex there. And everything else will be held quite nicely. So, okay, let me just put that back up here and get my fingers out of the way. All right, so hopefully that's working. All right, let's grab this junk out of the way, and then let's laminate this piece onto the section. There we go. You can turn the light off, and I'm just going to power this up so you guys can keep plugging along here with me today. I'm just going to grab my power cord here so we don't lose you guys. All right, there we go. Okay, yeah, good, and just keep asking the questions if you have any. So, a good question about that. Yeah, is that a plastic hard knife? No, just a regular old knife. It works. It happens to work quite nicely. So we're going to glue this in this way. We're going to apply the contact cement. We have it right here, and then while we have that up, we might as well put the contact cement on those back pieces as well, and we'll get those all prepped up as well. Okay, so really simple process. I'm using a foam brush right here, and we're going to go ahead and just put it on the back side. So you want to put it not overly thick, and you can use lots of stuff to adhere this, but I've just really found that I'm very much a fan of this contact cement. It just works great. And I'm just getting a good coating on it. Not trying to pool it up too much though, because I do want it to dry. We'll set it up. We'll leave it about maybe 8 to 10 minutes. Just this plastic card tends to dry pretty quick. It's not overly. It's not, like I said, it's not overly thick on there, so I don't want to leave it too long. There we go. So that's ready. I'm just going to do there. Now you don't have to, but I highly recommend that you just put the contact cement on both pieces. It has a much better contact if you do both. You don't have to, but it does actually state that it works better. So I'm going to come in here and apply on both. I'm not going to worry if I get any on the bottom. I don't really care about that being stuck on there. I'd rather have this full surface area with contact cement than have any gaps. And so I'm just going to go ahead and brush that in here. Kind of being careful when I get to this other edge here. What I might just do is just grab a piece of plastic card, just putting a little bit on there, and then I'm going to go right up to the other piece, and then I'm just going to scrape it there. That way I have it super tight. It's right in there. I can just scrape this piece off. No harm, no foul. I didn't ruin a piece of plastic card to do that, but I do have it right up to the join, which is great. Go ahead and apply it in here. This contact cement is going to just consolidate these pieces that I put in yesterday. It's a little bit more adhesive, a little bit more contact point. I'm going to thicken that in there just a little bit because it's not as smooth of a surface. So we'll pull it up there a little bit. Put a little bit on the tree. That way the plastic card will adhere right to that. There you go. Just got it all brushed in. Make sure we got all points covered. There we go. We'll leave that. Aaron finally caught one of these live. That's an average stash of Legion in the. Oh, I mean, yeah. It's. I think you see two shelves. It's double stacked, 5 shelves high, and then the top's even worse than that. So yeah, we got a bit of Legion here. I mean, that's why we need to build these tables, right? To have something to play. And behind me right here is all the figs in the cabinet as well. So nothing wrong with that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to spend a second and rotate this around so you guys can get the full view. You might as well see what I'm working on. Rotate. Need a giant lazy Susan. Well, typically I have my table so I can get around all sides. This one's not really conducive to building, but I gotta walk around it and lay it around on one side. So this is going to be the backside, or what we're calling the backside for this build here. And we're going to start gluing these down. Now I did sand these as well, and so you can kind of see that the contours are sort of sanded in just to give me a little bit more of a nice flow. This right here, super aggressive in terms of it's a pretty short drop between here and there. Remember though, we're going to bring our celluclay or sculpting mold, whatever we're going to end up using, and it's going to just make that contour go down a little bit more. Now, could I do that with foam? Yes, but the reason that I chose not to is I have a little bit more ability to control the placement with the sculpting mold after, because then if I lay it in, I'm like, it's too far, or I want that narrower, I can manipulate that by hand, and I don't have to worry about constantly cutting a piece. And because this is one large piece, if I make a nick or I make it too short with the foam, I have no ability to put that back in. With the sculpting mold, I can then manipulate and transition this down even more. So although it's this size here, we'll certainly change that that contour. Obviously, this lays in the bulk of it, so the directional shape, like this obviously has this sort of peninsula sort of jetting out, and we'll keep that with the sculpting mold, but we'll make that transition a little bit smoother. We might fatten it out a little bit or what have you. So, and then we'll put some other depressions in and things like that. So this is not the final look. This is just my rough texture that our ground design, I guess, that I'm working with. Same thing goes for this one out here. We'll have it here, and we'll use that transition between those two. So I just wanted to build up a little bit. This is also nice because this is much bulkier. It's lighter in weight, and it doesn't require the application of the sculpting mold to be real thick. If it's real thick, it takes a long time to dry. This obviously is a dry material, and then we're able to compensate for how much we're using. We'll have it much thinner over this, and then obviously the thickest it's going to be is right where it transitions from ground to here, but we can build that up and then have a much more free-flowing application. So, all right, so let's just turn all these over because we know that's what we need to do. This piece here is going to need to go in, but when we do that, we're going to need to make sure that it doesn't leak out or grab onto the bottom of the plastic card. We don't want this to be adhered. And so when I go to do this piece, I'm going to remove this piece immediately upon application. So we'll do that one in a second, but I wanted to give that plastic card, this piece here, a second to set up. We'll attach it, we'll tape it, we'll pull it off, and then we'll do all that at the same time. So there's a method to that in terms of why I'm not pulling that piece just yet. All right, same sort of deal here. So great time for questions because this is just a redundant process of applying this stuff. When you flow it like this, what ends up happening is you actually end up, so you can see here, and the reason I'm kind of using the side of my brushes, when these get used after a while, it starts to get hard and stiff. And so obviously it doesn't have as much sort of flow to it. So when you go to do this, you'll notice that it puts hard lines in. It actually removes a lot. So when they start to get less great, and I go through these basically. This one will be used for what I'm using it now, and it'll get chucked out. I don't typically wash them too much. They just don't wash up. You think you can get it all out, you can't. You come back when it's dry, and it's just rock hard. And so I just typically use the side of it. It tends to displace a little bit less when I'm doing that. So, all right. So nice to see some Legion Academy folks hanging out with us. Here in the studio for the build. It said day 8, so if you want to go back and find all the other videos are free. They're up on the TerrainStudio page. I don't think Joe has transitioned them over to the Legion Academy page, so you guys can find them there. We'll be back again tomorrow, same time. Now, a little bit of an application trick. I'm going to show you here. It's not really a trick. Nothing I do is tricky. I didn't invent anything. I haven't seen. Nobody really told me how to do anything in terrain making. Just FYI, but I don't want to like claim this is like genius at all. But so I applied it on there. I know it's on there. I'm going back. I'm doing a second layer. Now you're just going to say you just literally told us not to cake that on there. I did. And I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with this here in a second, just because I'm also lazy and look for efficiencies. So it's now caked on there, looking pretty good. It's obviously got more than it needs. So what I'm going to do is go over to the place that I'm going to put this down. I'm not going to adhere it permanently, but I am going to line up the corner, I'm going to line up the edge, I'm going to line up this side, I'm going to press it where it needs to go real quick. Press, 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 press. Delaminate. And then we're going to cheat in the sense that we now basically can just go back in and put anywhere there's kind of thin. And then we're going to spread this out as well. I don't need to draw any lines or anything like that. There we go. And that's set up quick and easy, and I don't need to worry about applying that again. We'll do the same thing with this guy. Figure out roughly where we want it. It's going to go anywhere. Wherever this goes, that's everything around this entire section will be dictated solely by where this piece is. So there's no real rhyme or reason to the orientation. My intent kind of is that it comes around this tree. So if you're thinking about wind blown coming around this corner, my thought was like it'll come around here, it'll shoot through this little rut that I put in here, and then sort of curve here. So that's kind of my thought. So that's kind of what I was going for when I applied that. So we'll go ahead and put this down. Reminds me when I was a kid painting butterflies. Gotcha, gotcha. With the stamping technique. I was trying to figure out that comment for a second. So yeah, there you go. I didn't paint any butterflies when I was a kid, I don't think, but the premise applies. I do work in the school system, so I get it. Get it. Yeah, the theory holds. So go ahead and make sure we get that full coverage first, and then we're going to go double that up. You guys even get the sounds of the TheTerrainStudio, so it's always fun. I'm sure that swishing sounds just super therapeutic on the microphone. All right, let's find the place this is going to go. Looks good, coming around the corner, wish, wish, wish. Yeah, that's fine. Boom, squish, squish, squish. Delaminate. You can see already, like, this stuff is fantastic in terms of adhesion. That looks pretty good. We're just gonna fill this small section in here. There we go. Perfect. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to bump that with my head. There we go. Doesn't hurt, but it's probably loud. Now, let's check this piece here. This is looking, yeah, looking fine. All right, we're gonna move this over here. Because I like you guys a lot, we're gonna take this around. Making sure we can see all that. Now what we're gonna do is go in here and apply this piece. Have your tape on standby. Your tape's gonna be your third, fourth, and fifth hand. What I recommend you do is you pick a point and then you press it as you go around. So for me, I'm most worried about this joint because I want it to be tight. We are going to put a buttress there, so it's going to cover that over, but let's go in and apply it. You'll see this stuff sticks quite quickly in terms of, you can pull it off, but we try to avoid doing that because that just takes away adhesion when we do that. And so I'm walking it just right to left here, or left to right on whatever screen you guys have. Walking that right across. Press, 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 press. Give it a press to make sure it contours nicely. Okay, I'm going to grab the camera super quick and then I'm going to apply the tape on that. Just going to take off the stand there. Pull this, get my hand out of the way. So there you go. We have applied it. That's our seam. We're going to put some tape in there. Running nice here. Nice tight fit along there. We're going to just just put a piece of tape right there to make sure that holds. But for all intents and purposes, that is the continuation of our wall, and we just basically had that notch, right? So this is going to be ground, so we don't need to have it going in behind here. The reason that we didn't cut this one as a single piece was, one, it was a complete waste of material to put it in behind there, and two, we're able to actually keep this flat edge because we have no ground cover at this point. So that was the reason that ended up being a little bit different. So, all right, get my hand out of the way here for you. There we go. That should have caught back up. Perfect. All right, so now we're going to go in and put our tape. And at this point, really, the tape is tape's really just to keep it laminated. It's not going to pull off. I can almost assure you that it will not. But it's a little bit of peace of mind for me, and I'll know that it's not going to shift or migrate at all. And that's quite important, that we don't have it migrating around. Just going to do there. We're probably not going to put anything at the bottom. I'm just going to let the natural adhesion hold at the bottom. I'm not really worried about it kicking out at all. While we got a second and while that's sort of setting up, I am going to just take the tape off this one. Now, in doing this, and I'm taking this tape off, while this has had several hours to dry at this point, I don't want to just get in here and just start ripping, because if it holds on here at all, there is potential that I can delaminate just from the pull. This is an adhesive as well, right, sticking to the plastic card. So I'm just being very careful in terms of pulling this off, in the fact that I don't want to just be really aggressive with it. So I'm just bringing the tape up to the edge, holding the edge, and just making sure that I'm not putting any unnecessary force or friction on that to pull that off. Just keep this tape. We'll pull that off in a second. I'm just going to get the top layer, and then I'll pull the whole piece out, and we can get all that off. And so these two pieces, like I said, this piece here and this piece I put on previously, and so we are just going to peel those off. We'll just give that a second to stay in place without me moving or manipulating it. Then we'll glue this back side in, get that piece done. So I've seen Tyrone in chat, we've seen Johnny in chat, we've seen Aaron in chat. Who else we got in chat? Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and pull this out. Pull these front tabs off as well. And then we'll cut this next piece as well, even though most of that's going to get covered over, we will cut that as well. As we said, we're working on a little bit of various things. We'll pull that away. Put that adhesive on the tree, but then I realized that I'm not really going to need that, so it didn't really adhere. So just pull this away. And I'll give you a look at what this looks like as a kind of a finished base layer. Now everything, obviously plastic card can stick to the foam, as I just showed you right now. But everything that we're going to add onto this in terms of the retaining wall, that will all be plastic card or polystyrene, and it's polystyrene sticking to polystyrene. We know that we're going to get a proper adhesion. So For that, however, I can use super glue for some of that, so certain parts I will just use super glue if I want a quick and easy hold. I can obviously use contact cement, it will work. I can use weld bond, that works as well. So I can use a number of adhesives after this when I'm going polystyrene to polystyrene. And so having this nice, smooth, clean surface, Otis as well, that's correct. Having this nice, clean surface to work from in terms of very clean and flat is quite nice, because I can make sure everything sticks on here. One of the things that we are going to have to deal with as a unique property is the fact that we are going to have this contour, and I don't think anything's too large in the sense that let me grab that large square tubing here. When I call it square tubing, it really is called square tubing, but when you put this on here, one of the things that you have to be careful with is the contours being so sharp that you're not going to get proper adhesion between the backside. But none of these contours are so sharp where it's going to have like this void in the back, which is one of the reasons that I wanted to have these big swooping corners as opposed to a really quick and sharp undulation moving along. And so while we'll have to account for the contours in our tubing, the panels themselves, we're going to cut various panels to go along all the bottom. So we're going to have this redundancy of panels along the bottom. We're going to have a very uniform shape to this, in the sense that it's not going to be like a very unique wall in the sense that this panel is different from this panel, which is going to give us some efficiencies in the fact that we are going to literally need to cut probably, I'd say 6'1", maybe 3.5 linear feet of panels going around. So I think when they're all done, it's going to look really sharp, but there's going to be some efficiencies in that, and I'm very glad for that. It's very much like doing, to be perfectly honest, it's very much like doing the panels for this hut, in the sense that I had to cut every panel sort of the same by hand, although this one had many more pieces than the bottom is going to have. It's going to be much more flat and sort of simplified structure, and we'll use the painting to kind of differentiate that and make it look unique in its own right. Okay, so now we have this done here, in the sense that it's all set up and drying, that last piece. Let's get on this backside piece and get this last panel adhered, and then we'll move back to the front and we'll finish the other part of the wall, and then we'll probably be done the session for today. It is at an hour. I did say I told my wife I'd go a little bit longer today, so I will see how far I can get in the next 30 minutes or so. Right, so we need to come around this side. It's tea time. Let's have a look at this panel and make sure we got everything solidified there. That looks good there. Now I have the front wall as a reference point as well. Every time I do this, I have more and more points of reference. So I'm going to retape this for a second here, and I'm going to retape this to the tree here. And that's just going to allow me to know where this needs to go in. That's already taped, so I'm just checking. Yeah, everything's referenced quite nicely. Now I can remove this, and we can chuck the tape in there, keep the floor clean here. So now we can pull this out, reference this back, etc., and then we will pop that in. These will be a few minutes. We'll get them on there in a second. We'll set this one up, and then we'll basically be ready to set that aside, move back to the front, get the wall done, and then probably off camera I'll adhere this one if not during the show. So let's go ahead and just do that application again. Question time, comment time, criticism time. Share your own hobby story time. By the way, this is low odor. It's almost almost no smell to this. So typically with contact cement, you'll wear a mask or be in a super ventilated area. I'm in a very large space in the sense that there's no walls down here, so it's quite open. But again, it's low odor stuff. So if you're curious, and we all wear masks lots nowadays, and so the opportunity to not wear one in the comfort of my own home when no one's around is to be taken advantage of, for sure. And the reason I do this first layer nice and thin is I do want to make sure that I get over everything. I don't want to slop it on in the sense that it's easy to miss getting to all the surface if I go too thick in the first layer. So you just try to thin this out. There's a pop. What do we got here? Dinner time for these. Gotcha. Later, Johnny. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for joining, and of course, get your kids some food. I don't want to come between anyone's meal time. That's for sure. We'll do similar when I get off stream. All right, so let's just pile this up now that we can. Got it nice and thick. Down, go in here. The main concern I have is just making sure that I don't get too much unnecessary adhesion on the wall, just because I don't want to have to clean that up later. I don't want to create any undue thickness between the wall and here. So we're going to go ahead and slide this in as best we can, so making a super mess. Get it nice and tight. Line it up as best we can. Looks pretty good there. Pretty good there. Press, 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 press. Good, good. Delaminate. There we go. Looks solid. Then we'll go back in and backfill this a little bit. We did pretty good not getting much on the wall. You want to get it up as close to the wall as we can now. I know that we had a little bit, it's not quite, there's a corner just clean there. We can not worry about that though. Awesome, Tyrone. Have a good day as well. Off to bed on the other side of the world. We got it. I have a sister in England, so I'm not sure where exactly you are, but I think you said in and around that region. Roughly like that. Looks good. Let that set up. I think we're probably pretty close on these other ones. So just for a minute while we can, we'll seal this up. Perfect. Okay, so let's go back to our pieces over here. Get ready to laminate these down. Again, we're going to want to make sure we get as close to the corners as possible. We can always sand later, but the less work we need to do later, the more we can do new work instead of having to go back and fix old work. All right, then I'm just going to make sure you get, bring it right to the corner. There we go. And I'm not going to pry this up, and you guys can certainly television, we can sort of fake power, but I will tell you right now that in trying to pry that up, so you can see my knuckles sort of change color. It's not coming up. It's not going anywhere. So when I say that this tape does nothing but provide peace of mind, that's generally accurate. The only parts that I really care about are these little like very thin sections, and so I just usually put it on there just so that I don't like bump it or hit it, or I don't have like a little corner pry up at the end and then there's a delamination potential. But this tape, let's not kid ourselves. It's not actually holding this down. But as I said, it's peace of mind for me. So I just go along and check, oh, hey, this little front fringe right here, does that need to have like just a little extra adhesion right now? Yes. So I might just pop that down on there. Just kind of going along. I am always overly concerned if there's flex, like of course we dealt with that, you know, if there's a little bit of flex in it, yes, that might help, but weight probably is your better option there. So again, this is just peace of mind stuff. Get that held down. There we go. Perfect. Let's go to the next one. Just sort of lining that up roughly where we had it. Looks good. Yada 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 ish. Go press. Give it a solid press. And then I'm just pressing it along, just trying to like slide it. Friction is holding this. I'll assure you this right here. I'll take 2 thumbs and press this, and I'll move the table before I move this piece. 2 fingers, pull it back. I'll move the table before I move this piece. So it's a good thing I'm putting this tape on here is all I'm saying, because without it, I'm pretty sure this would just fly straight off the table. And that was 100% sarcasm, if that wasn't coming through on the internet. All right. So that's too wet. You can see, and you'll probably see the color change on that. So you can see kind of how white that is, and then sort of the glistening of this right now. So it has quite a bit of moisture still in it. And so really what we want to do is we want to let this tack up. So we'll set that off there. We'll actually just set this behind me for now, because I want to spin this again and get back to that front side, and then let's try to get that front piece done. You're just joining us, because I know we lost a few people to times and days and business that they need to attend to, but if you're just joining us now, welcome. If this is your first time ever, welcome. There's 7 other days you can go check out. And if you are here because you've been here the whole time, well, good on you. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're just going to measure out this and finish up the last bit of plastic card work that we're going to get, preliminary plastic card work. So, hey, Bernard checking in. Welcome. Checking in from Ottawa, Ontario here. So Bernard, hopefully keeping safe. I see Ontario's going wackadoodle with the COVID numbers. So, yeah, hopefully you're being safe there. So what we're going to do now is figure out how big of a piece we need to cover that. And I was just seeing if I had any scraps available in terms of how much we have. So this isn't going to work. We don't have a piece long enough. And so we're probably going to do this one in 2 pieces, which is fine. We've already seen how to do that, but I can show again in terms of, let's join that up, and let's grab our piece of plastic card that we had from before, and let's just do a rough measurement. Is this going to be enough to do it? So if we flex that in, ish, flex that around, ish, we're going to go right to about there. Then we're going to go from here, there, no, but it's only 1 inch high, and I believe that we have multiple inches here to work with. Yes, so we should be able to get this one right here and doing that. Awesome, Bernard, staying inside and staying safe. Appreciate that. Not because I'm concerned you're going to give people COVID, but because you're keeping yourself safe. Then you can come back to a future cast COVID-free. All right, so let's go ahead and start laying this in. Now, it doesn't matter where we start, but I'm just going to start from here at a convenience in this corner because it's nice and flush. So hobby and gaming stores are not essential. Where do I get my paint and glue? Fair, if that's a legitimate question. There's lots of companies that you can get to. While I say support local, if they're not open, that is difficult. But Hobby Sense that comes out of, I think there's a depot in Ontario, but I'm not 100% sure. But for sure in Winnipeg, there is one. So Hobby Sense, go check them out. They have a great surplus of items. They in no way endorse my show, but I will just say I had a good customer experience there. They do carry a lot of brands as well, which is quite nice. So they're not like exclusive to AK or anything like that. Fair enough, you're just kidding. I will stop prattling on about them. But nonetheless, I got a free plug. So just jacking my chain here, prattle on my show. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just do a rough measurement. We know that this should be a fairly known quantity, but the reason that we're not just going to assume that it's going to be the same measurement around is because we're actually going to have a little bit of ground undulation change here. So we're going to have to decide, are we mostly concerned about the ground and it being flush there, or are we most concerned about this level and it being flush here? And the answer is we're concerned about this level because the ground we're going to compensate with rocks. We've already talked about that. So I'm just concerned with how high is it here? Excuse me. So it's not COVID. I'm just going to mark off there, and I'm going to press this here, there. I'm going to flex this in here. And I'm just taking some like real measurements from the actual physical terrain here, and we're going to try to work out if we can have some sort of like known line. So effectively, what I did was just press those in to the piece, and you can see I just took these like periodic measurements. Well, that's going to determine my line. I don't need to like mark a point and mark a point. My line's going to run along there. Now, it may end up that my line's going to have a little bit of a flow to it in terms of like, off by a degree or two, but that's going to follow the contour of this piece as opposed to me making a measurement and the assumption being that everything is perfectly level. I never make the assumption that everything's perfectly level because in hand making everything, it's so easy to have a variation of a half a degree here or there. And so I'm just going to attempt to see how square that is, and then I'm going to physically account for this. And we only need to be close. We only ever need to be close. We never need to be perfect. We say perfect, but we never achieve it. Okay, once upon a time I had a knife, and it lived where? Here it is. Alright, we're gonna see how close we are with this. Score. 1, 2, break, break. I can feel it high-sided a little bit right here. It's perfect here. And I can just feel that it's a touch high-sided there. So what I'm going to do is and that literally could just been how, like the angle at which I had my pencil line. So I'm not going to be too hard on myself here in the fact that I can change the degree at which my pencil's held and probably change that ever so slightly. Let me just show you that if I can bring it up here on the camera. Yeah, there we go. It's at the bottom. Let me swap that around. And so you can see from this point, there it was perfectly flush. And then as we move along here, we're about a pencil width off, maybe a pencil width and a half of a 0.7. So we're going to, we're probably off by, I'd say, at most a millimeter, but maybe a shade under, and so we're going to shave that off. that's where having that sharp knife comes in handy. Go ahead and just give that a shave. With that shaving, I typically do try to pressure cut, because it's hard to run that along the exact same line multiple times. But there you go, guys. We got our little sliver and our tees. There we go. That's how thin it is. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and pop that back in. Nice tight fit there. And I will tape that in place and show you how that first one looks. We're paying attention to our other application process here, making sure that it doesn't dry out too much. I'll put a little tape on here, because what we're going to do before we attach anything, in this case, we're going to cut the entire thing, because if we need to make any adjustments or changes, we want to make sure that we have the ability to do that. Do we need to shift it back a little bit, forward a little bit, et cetera, et cetera. We're also being very careful when we are measuring this to press this foam down, right? Remember, this is free floating, so it's not stuck in place. And so we want to make sure we don't like misaccount for, oh, hey, this was flexed up. You can see I can get a little flex here. Press it down when you're measuring that to make sure that you account for the actual height. There we go. Okay, let's grab that camera and come in here and have a look again. A little look-see. Go. So what we are measuring there is just getting a nice flush fit in the corner. That's actually marker, not a gap. And then moving along here, same thing. So here, what we're gonna do, it's actually on the bottom of the foam, but you can see here, got a little bit of a foam flex. And so when we finish that up, we'll just press that foam down and we'll get that nice flush look along there. So you can start to see, we're starting to get that retaining wall look in. We got these sort of weird scallops. We're gonna have that elevation change. And like I said, we decided we're gonna bring rock up here and cover up some of this. And then this will be a real nondescript barrier. And then this one as well will just be that redundant look. It'll be kind of like the top version of this. And then we'll bring those pipes and run them along the top. And we'll figure out some sort of transitional element there that we need to yet work out. So, to be determined. All right, let's put you back up here. Plug you back in. We'll work for a few more minutes here. All right, so 2 more pieces to cut. Just getting that a nice press in. I'm gonna grab myself a little bit of tape and make sure that we get this really at least fit in tightly here at the bottom. Okay, and then we'll flex that, make sure that works. Okay, let's go back to our other piece here. Got a nice flush edge. We're going to want to make sure we have this marked in accordingly. Flexing, flexing, flexing. Now this seam right here, this is going to end up being where a buttress is going to go. Now I haven't decided how wide or how many I'm going to have. We'll come up with some sort of like conducive measurement. However, part of doing that and part of making that determination, I will tell you right now, is going to be where this buttress is. So where this one goes, I will then use that as I need to put one here, therefore I can make the determination of where everything is going to go, how wide they're going to be, that sort of thing. Same thing on the back side on this corner, we're going to have one here. It's natural to have it on the corner, but more natural because I have a seam there. I have one seam here, and that's right on this transition, so I'm going to put one here for sure as well. Now, that being said, I don't really care if I have a seam here. I can make that seam here or here. I can do whatever I want. It's just important that I have one here to cover over that seam. Now, when I'm thinking about that, doesn't really seem like a big decision to make right now, but if I go ahead and flex this all around, let me just grab my pencil so I can mark this. So that's going to fit there. Transition this around. Flex, flex, flex. Flex this in there. That's going to put my other seam right about here. So now I have to have a seam here as well. Now the distance between there and there is important because I'm going to have a seam here and a seam here. That's going to then determine how many do I need between this point and that point. Because if I end up going, let's say I want to go every 3 inches, right? And I go 3 inches, 3 inches, 3 inches. Well, now I have a buttress and a seam side by side. I probably don't want to have that. So what I'm going to do is let's figure out the distance from here to here and figure out if I'm going to end up being super lucky, or what we do is we change how long this next piece is so that it's, and then we do another piece here, but then our two seams are equidistantly placed. So that just helps us in our design. Off-topic question. Oh yes, I saw this question. Sorry, Bernard, I did not respond to you. I did see this question you asked me. How do you do trenches like the ones on Hoth, Crate, Empire Strikes Back, Last Jedi, versus the ones on Minban, solo movie? Those were like World War I, trying to decide between the two or a combination. Okay, longer answer to a question. Let me do this, and then I will provide some sort of coherent response in terms of what I think you can do. You're going to be the decider of it, of course. So, just using my bendy ruler, which is fantastic. This is made by Stadler. It's in like the engineering sections of office stores, like where they have like, let's say, different types of measuring tools, like triangular rulers, or if they have like template rulers for drawing plans and schematics. That's where you can find one of these. Okay, so this is going to be 10, let's see here, 10 and 5/8 of measurement here. So 10 and a half, let's just see here, we're going to do some quick math on this. These buttress pieces are 1/4 of an inch-ish in thickness, a little bit more, maybe 5/16. Let me see, that probably was literally written on the package that I just grabbed this from. Yeah, 5/16, that would have been good, I could have read. Head out, perfect, we'll see you later. Otis, see you tomorrow. Or perhaps not, but hopefully we do. So if these are 5/16 and we have roughly 10 and a half inches, we're probably better to go about 10 inches. And then we have the option to go a buttress every, let's just see here. If the line was here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that's 9 inches because I'm actually on the 1 inch measurement. So if we did a buttress every 3 inches, buttress every 3 inches is probably most appealing to me. What do you guys think? 3 inches apart for, I know you don't even know what the design's gonna look like, but does 3 inches look like it would be too much? I think 3 inches looks pretty good. 4 inches is maybe a bit too wide. 4 inches looks like that. To me, that's just too wide. 3 inches I think works good. Fine, I'll just decide on 3 inches. That being said, I then need to cut a piece that's going to be sort of 9 inches along here. So I need to make that measurement-ish. Of course, we'll have a little bit of flex because we have 5/16 of an inch to cover a seam, and so wherever the seam ends up, we got quite a bit of play on either side. So that being said, we're now going to cut. How close are we on that stuff? We get pretty close. We're now going to cut this piece to fit with our intent of our design. Press this in, press this in, press this in. That's going to fit all the way to there. How's that not? Oh, I should just check that line again. Oh yeah, that's right.
Just checking. There we go. I was measuring to the wrong line, so it was the original line. I just translate the line to the top. Makes it a lot easier to figure out where we need to cut. And really working hard to press this in so the measurement is as accurate as possible. I'm then going to draw the line in there, and then while I'm at it, I'm going to attempt to draw the line I need to cut for distance as well, in terms of on the back side. Okay.
Perfect. So what we're going to do is just cut along that line, and then that is our point that we're going to shorten it up to. So easy enough to do both of those. And let me just grab this real quick. You can see that we have, it looks like we don't have very much on there, but as I rotate that, you can see the glistening of the adhesion. It's still all there. This will get, it's not really super tacky to our touch, but when the two get together, it's like a party. Okay. This I'm going to try to square as best I can. Just using that. I am a right-hander, so I'm going to come across this way, this way. Score 1, 2. Okay. And then we're going to cut along here. Use the ruler to follow the line. We're not overly concerned. Got a little dipsy doodle in there, so I think we're going to have a little bit of a proud portion there, but that's fine. We can cut that, trim it later. Okay, go back to our test fit, grab our tape. Tape this as true as we can, flush as we can. Bring that around, okay. I'm just gonna tape this along the way here, just to hold that in. A little bit on the bottom because it's at a little bit of a hard angle. Alright, next one. Flex this around. It's going to stick out a little bit. There's a little bit of a gap in the foam there. Just, and when I say gap, it's like in terms of up and down. This is a little bit of a sharper, we're keeping the gradual nature here. There's a little bit of a dip in the foam. It's okay. We'll account for that with the plastic card. That was a known solution. And then can't really tell, but it's kicking out a little bit right here. You guys can, it's hard for me to, you can see it's sort of flexing out. So what I want to do in terms of making sure my next measurements are accurate, I'm just going to flex that in with the tape and then put the tape on it, then it stays nice and good. So here's the test. Let's go back to our point. That is on the 1 inch mark. I'm just using 1 as opposed to 0, so I have the zeros is flexed a little bit too much at the end of this ruler. So going along, and we end up at, let's see here, that's the 10 mark. That's the 1 mark, and so we're just off by about
We split the difference, so we're off by 5/16, which is what we wanted to be off by, so that we can create and have enough flex between that. So effectively we'll do 1 on this one, then on the 7, then on the 4, then on the 1. And so we got enough to account for excuse me, that distance. And we're going to lose a little bit of it here, and so if we were to flex this in a bit harder, if we want to change that angle, we're going to gain back a bit more down there. But again, we have less than the distance of this, which is what we want to have for the seams, and so that seems quite fine. Okay, before we do the last piece and end off, we'll have a final chat at the end and talk about maybe what we can do tomorrow. I want to rotate this back around so I can put this thing in place. Go. So tomorrow we'll get to likely working on the retaining wall itself, and I'll probably just scratch a couple panels in tonight so that I don't have to start from scratch with you guys tomorrow. So we still have some puddles here. It's not going to be a problem. We're going to put this in place, and then we're going to remove, ideally, we're going to remove the front piece. So we can still tell here that we have, you know, the ability to pull this up. It had a little bit of stick there from the tape, but we'll put that back down in place. There we go. Now we want to put this in here, and as soon as we do, it's going to grip quite nicely. So we want to make sure we don't stick it down and have to move it too much. Properly hear that. That's good. And I'm just going to walk this along with my fingers, getting this edge first, because this is most important. Just pressing that in place. Pressing that in place. Great. And now I just want to walk this down here. Press this in. We've got a little gap between the tree, which I talked about. The reason being, we're going to transition that down. We wanted to not have it as tight against the tree. I didn't like it. I cut it last night, and I was like, I need to back that up. It just looked really awkward. It was too cutting off too much of the root system to be conducive to the look. We're going to give that a press in there. Super. And then hopefully you guys can see. Now that now we'll change the profile of this wall, right? We now have this, the panels are going to go in. However, mind you, we'll cut the panels in as if they're going in straight, and they'll be fully formed. Then what we'll do is, as we need to, we'll actually nick this piece of foam here, either cutting it back a little bit or what have you, so that the panels fit in. Then we'll use the ground covering to come back into the wall. So I'm going to build the wall as if it's fully intact. Now, you might think, like, why do that and waste the time to build the stuff that's going to be hidden? Well, less than half the wall will be hidden in any one point, so that's not really a huge issue. And the reason being is that if you think about it, building a square panel, like panel, and having them all redundant is way better than building a panel to fit behind this contour, building a panel to fit behind this contour, and this one, and this one, and this one. And so that's the reason that we're going to do that. And I think when we fit it all together, it'll look much more of a conducive unit, as opposed to having, like, oh, the gap between the bottom here is a little bit wide, or the gap here doesn't. It'll just be way better. And I think if you can just trust me on that, I think we'll end up with a good product in the end. So okay, so we have that in. It's adhered. Oh, we forgot, because of course we don't want it to fly away with a little bit of a breeze, and so we're going to stick a couple pieces of tape on this to hold it down. You never know when that could delaminate. The only part I actually am concerned with is here, just making sure that little bit of a peninsula stays down. And likewise over here too in the corner, a little bit of a small spot. Here we go. All right, so let's rotate this back for the last time on the stream. There. Okay.
And just in case you were concerned, again, this isn't locked in place, so we can remove this. The glue on the back's not going to have enough adhesion because remember we basically kept it true of the line, so it's not encroaching. If a little squeezes out based on the fact that we have these pieces stuck down, it's still probably not going to be enough. I'm only going to finish up this piece, and then perfectly honest, I'm going to pull this out and then just set that aside so that I don't have any issue there. I got to get working on these panels anyway, and so I'll want to have that piece separate. And then I can actually work on two things at once. What's going to solidify this all together, and the fact that it's going to be like pretty permanent, is going to be the ground cover that we're going to add. And we're not going to do any of that until we finish the wall. And we'll probably put the wall in and primer the wall as well, and then we'll worry about being frustrated later when we're trying to paint in and around all this stuff. So, and then I'll probably airbrush in most of that, and then the ground cover will be sprayed with the wall color, and then we'll use another color over the rocks, and we'll keep going back and forth, and we'll fight that battle of overspray, which is a natural occurrence when you're making terrain anyway. All right, nearly 2 hour stream today. My apologies for that. Let's finish this up and get you guys on your way, and I'm gonna go watch baseball, which is also my part-time job. All right. So the last little piece that we need to do here, let's just check. The only concern that we have is this going to exceed 3 inches? And the answer is 1, 2, 3. The answer is no. So we are fine in the sense that this final piece here is going to be okay. Now, we have a little bit of a dilemma in the fact that I said I was going to put another piece of foam in here. And then have that sort of threshold done. The reason I didn't is part of the rationale I came to last night around I'm going to actually bring a rock layer. It's going to kind of like go up and down and sort of undulate and shoot out a little bit here. And so I just figured that I'll end up putting a rock mass in there. And then I'll bring some of that rock actually right up into this piece here because we didn't gap fill any of those. And so we'll have that rocky sort of transition here in the corner. And so we're going to leave the wall, go right to the end, we'll put a buttress on there, and then we'll rock over the whole thing. So now what we're going to do is really simply is measure this last portion. Looks like we got a nice flush thing. We are going to have to either count for the transition of the wall of the board here or cut up to it. In this case, I'm probably just going to cut up to it. And so I need a pencil line to mark that. And that'll be kind of our end point there. And so we'll do that. And then in doing that, we're going to need to measure the line here. But the reason I don't want to measure the line, the height, is because I'm going from foam to here, and I'm actually at a slight bit of an angle. And so if I measure the wall and were to cut it, and then I go to set it down, it's actually going to be like this, and we'll have a deficit from this distance. So I'm going to cut this square first, and then we'll figure out what we need to do for the other piece. So again, just using my square to square, my ruler, then we'll cut that piece. So if you're thinking about like cost of projects and like how much things are going to cost, and so if you're concerned, the amount of plastic card that I used here is probably, I only used 1 sheet to basically finish off this and this, but the equivalent of finishing this would certainly have been 2 more sheets. So so it's $7.50 to buy that package. So if you're thinking about it, it's probably a package and a half. Probably about $10 just to do the plastic card work on the preliminary side of that. Now, if you don't really care about your budget, then $10 is nothing. If you care about your budget and you're thinking like, geez, is that worth it? I think that this preliminary layer is super important, to be perfectly honest. I wouldn't want to just start sticking my wall panels to the foam itself. I don't think that would translate into being very accurate in the measurements. You'd have a lot of measurement issues because you wouldn't have necessarily a perfectly flat surface. Even though we sanded it and cut it together, it looked good. It's not as true as the plastic card itself. So foam wise, in terms of the investment in the sheet here, in terms of this, this is a full 1-inch sheet of foam, a full 16 square feet of foam. And so you're probably talking about $25 in foam to do this tree. And you're probably talking about the equivalent of that to do the bottom. So we're probably $50 to $60 in foam in this as well. So, excuse me, all the other bits, the dog food dishes, the spray bottles and all that, probably a couple $100 in materials already into this build. So it's not going to be a super cheap build in terms of materials. But of course there's cost savings to be had if you had foam, if you had scraps, if you had, you know, spray dishes or spray bottles or dog food dishes. So there is savings to be had. It's not the most expensive project, but we're going to basically incorporate mostly cheaper materials that will accumulate in cost. There's not going to be any like big ticket items, with the exception of the acrylic. Will probably be about $100 into the acrylic by the time we finish up this. So that's certainly going to be one of the more expensive elements of this, just in the sense of what I'm using for that. So you can obviously buy cheaper forms if you have and larger quantities. We've talked about that as well. So yeah, just in case that people were interested in sort of the cost analysis at this point. And I can do a much better breakdown if that's of interest. But it probably isn't. So we'll keep it at that crude analysis there. All right, so last piece that we'll cut here, and then I'll handle any questions, and if not, we'll let you guys go for the evening. I mean, you can leave at any point, but thanks for hanging out. All right, just gonna go ahead and lay that in there. I'm not sure if you guys saw that. It was true to the board, so I didn't have to cut a notch. One extra cut on that one for good measure. There we go. Pop that guy in, flex it. It's gonna probably stay on that zone. Looks pretty good. There we go. Let's add a little bit. And what I'll do off camera, just so you guys know, is I will just pull that all back off, add the contact cement, let that set up, and then put them in turn. Gluing one, I'll glue all of them and just let them dry. They'll all be simultaneously drying at the same time, and then I'll just put them in one after the other, making sure that I press it in first, tape it all, and then do the subsequent next piece. So awesome, there we go. Gonna lay that in, press that in there. I really don't need to tape this, but I'm just gonna do it for thoroughness, that you guys will see that we finished up the wall. There we go, it's in. So wall is in, this wall's in, this is dry, that piece is in, that piece is in. Far piece over there is in, and now we have effectively all of our ground structures into the table. Everything else after this is going to be sculpt mold. We will end up covering basically this entire table with sculpt mold. I decided that I'm probably going to just do the whole thing. Maybe not every element of it. I just where I need it, but we're going to use it to transition beach to the ground mass. So compensate for this. We're going to obviously transition from ground mass into the rock, into the wall. So we'll have a little bit here. So we might not necessarily need a ton on there, but we'll probably will, just to account for any of the tool marks that we still have. Excuse me. On the back side, obviously, our landforms, we're gonna at least transition those. Maybe the tops won't need it, but we'll definitely compensate that with some smooth transitions. And then the only spot we're probably not going to need it is up here, to be perfectly honest, because we're going to keep this relatively flat. Although we may build up a little bit of a foundation for where the huts are going to go in, and so we may, in the end, have most of it covered. But we'll work on that. I'm not sure how much cellular clay I have here in sculpt mold, so we may use sculpt mold in some places and cellular clay in the others, just to make sure that we have enough. I have a bag of each, I think, so I might just buy another bag to make sure I'm using the same thing for the whole thing. So we'll figure that out. It's not overly important at this moment, but Just to letting you know that we are going to get rid of the pink. At a certain point I get tired of looking at pink, so I usually just paint it just so I don't have to look at it, but I'm not quite there yet, and it won't be there for some time anyway, because I'm going to be spending probably the next week ish just building this wall, to be perfectly honest. I'm not sure how fast it's going to go. Shouldn't say that it's going to take me an overly long time, but will certainly be redundancy of the panels. We'll burn through a ton of plastic card on that, so I may just do a little bit of a run for a bulk sheet, but I did pick some of that up. I'm there. I always like to buy from the local stores when I go. I went for knife blades, and I just bought like $50 worth of stuff just because I'm there and I like to keep them in business. And he was open. I was surprised that they were even open, so pretty good guy. So I want to support the local stores. So, all right, guys, I'm going to jump back on camera, and then I'll say goodbye to you in a proper fashion with a face as opposed to talking hands. First, I'm going to grab my trackpad so I can actually do that. I think you guys might have been on the wrong microphone for some of that too. So sorry if I sounded distant. I was actually much closer, but fair enough. We'll go from there. So hopefully the audio is okay. But if not, you guys will let me know. So all right, guys. So that ends up day 8 of the Kashyyyk project, Kashyyyk week here. Tomorrow we will get back at it. Same time, 5 Central, and we'll work on getting some of the panels laid in. I'll cut some of those panels with you guys. Tonight I'll actually cut some of the panels and get the pieces worked out in terms of design, and then that way I don't have to cut that all for you tomorrow. We'll continue cutting it. I will walk you through everything so you won't miss anything, but I want to get a little bit of ahead of you if I can. So that will end off. If you guys are inclined, go over and check out the TheTerrainStudio on YouTube. Sub, it's free. Build the subs up there. There's about 5,000 people over there, so you can go join them there. Let's see if we can jam that up to the 10,000 mark here before too long. And as well, if you want to check out the Patreon, you can. Videos will be dropping there for the Kashyyyk project ongoing once Kashyyyk week ends. So if you want to follow the project there, you can. And I'll do little tutorials along the way as well. Each month is a number of other things going on there as well. Don't forget there's a special this month as well. I said anybody on the $5 tier or higher, you're going to get access to that 1 hour consult, and I'll do that for everybody that I can, and everybody who wants to, I should say. I will do it for everyone, as I said, and that's a $15 tier perk, but we're going to do it this month for every single person. So if you just want to meet, chat, talk about your projects, ask about products, just sort of a think tank, I'm fine to do all that with everyone. And I will do that for everyone this month, and this month only at the $5 tier. But I am interested in getting you guys on board so you guys can see what we have in store at the TheTerrainStudio. You'll also get access to every video that's ever been put up there, as well as all the future content as well. So if you want to jump over there, I appreciate that. $5 is a lot. I understand that, but it goes a long way as well. So please consider that if you can. So tomorrow I will catch you guys at 5. Have a great evening, and I will see you all next time. Cheers.